All right, so check this out. This is my very first live stream. And the funny thing is you're probably wondering why I've never done a live stream before. And that is because at home, I actually can only upload about 2 megabits per second. I actually had to drive all the way down here to town to actually start a live stream. So if you're kind of wondering what my setup is here, I'm actually sitting in my car down here in the King Soopers parking lot. And take a look at this. These are my lights right here. I actually have 2 lights. And hey, I actually got some people chatting. I actually do see a chat, and then the chats disappear, which is kind of interesting. The other technical difficulty about a live stream, especially on my phone, because I'm actually recording on my phone, is that my screen starts fading after about 10 minutes. I have to kind of wake up my phone, which is kind of interesting. And the other problem is since I'm doing a live stream, these lights are kind of the limiting factor as far as how long I can actually live stream. So essentially what I did is I actually just made a video. I just recorded tomorrow's video. And the problem is if you actually look at the back of these lights, there's 2 batteries right here on the lights. And the problem is I just did a video and yes, hello, I am live, believe it or not. And I was just saying that I'm pretty much limited as far as as far as the time that I can live stream is basically limited by the amount of battery power. I just did a video and I actually have 2 lights that are kind of about almost halfway, almost dead. And then I actually charged them for about 20 minutes and then came over here and started doing this. So eventually what's going to happen is my lights are going to start dying one at a time. I have 1 backup light, 2 lights on me now. And once those are gone, pretty much, hey, what's going on? Hey, cool. Hi. Wow, a lot of people. It's going really fast. Bobby is not here. Thanks. I was thinking about bringing Bobby. I thought it would be a little too cold. What's the best morph to buy for breeding? I've got a normal. I would probably go with a multiple gene male. Hell yeah, a live stream. Yes, I said the H word, live. The funny thing about live stream is I can't take anything back. It's there and it's done. Just sold the Bumblebee. Yeah, it's almost going too fast. I can't hardly read the comments. It's going pretty fast. And once a lot of people start joining, I don't know if I can keep up with all the questions. But it's kind of interesting. I'm sitting in my car right now doing a live stream in the parking lot of King Soopers. I actually have my studio lights here. I have my tripod, and then I got an adapter on top of my tripod for a Galaxy Note 9 phone. The funny thing is about the phone is I actually plugged it in. I'm charging the phone, and it's kind of draining as we go. So we'll see what happens between the lights and the phone, which dies first. I'm thinking the lights are going to die first, and then I'm going to probably have to call it for the live stream. But I can kind of answer your questions if you put up some questions. I also printed out some questions too. If I'll try to answer some questions. They're going pretty fast. I don't know if I can do it. Actually, let me try reading some of these questions on some of these. I actually printed these out from some of the questions underneath some of my videos. And JLSR asks, let's see if I can actually read this. So there may be an answer to this question, but I'd like to see a video based on why these morphs are happening in the first place. If we based it on the theory of evolution, seems that the rate of morph is happening before our eyes. Evolution does not happen that fast, which is pretty amazing. I kind of thought the same thing about ball pythons too, that they just kind of, it's almost like we're seeing evolution right in front of our eyes where the new morphs are popping out. It's pretty amazing. How many snakes do I have? That is a good question, Caleb. Probably I'd say I have about 50 breeders, I'd say about 50, and then the hatchlings, I think I have about 40. So I think I'm about up to 90 hatchlings. What do I have the cows for? Meat. Actually, originally I bought the cows for meat, and now I'm kind of a chicken. I kind of raise them as pets. And the funny thing is I just kind of raise them as a hobby, and then I sell them live on the hoof. I don't really like to take my pets and send them off for slaughter, so that is pretty good. So can everybody hear me okay and see me okay? I was wondering if there was any kind of a delay with this phone and the internet kind of streaming through my 4G phone. What is my favorite breed? Bamboos, of course. Cool, you can hear me. Yes. How tall am I? I am 6'4". I may have shrunk an inch. I might be 6'3" now. Wow, yeah, the comments are going pretty fast. What is the best substrate for snakes? I found pretty much the Pro Coco. I've been kind of jumping back and forth between substrates. I actually started with, believe it or not, I started with paper towel. And the funny thing is, then I went to aspen, and then from the aspen, I went over to coconut chips, and then I went back to paper, and then pretty much landed back on Pro Coco. And that's what I've been using pretty much the whole time. Uh, yeah, so it's been 5 minutes, 46 seconds. I want to go down and read another question here off the list here. Bonga Bonga says, what genes are in Bobby? That's a good question. Actually, Bobby is just a straight bamboo ball python with no other genes in the mix. How long does a shed take? That's a good question. Usually when they start shedding, they shed pretty quick. Sometimes they can get stuck in a shed. I have a couple snakes that are stuck in sheds, but usually the time between sheds is usually dependent on actually how much you feed them. The more you feed them, the more they shed, the more often they shed, which is kind of interesting. Can rats get mites? I don't think they can. I think they can probably get fleas or other, mammal kind of stuff, but I don't think that rats can actually get snake mites, which is cool. Have I ever had to deal with scale rot? No, I haven't had. Luckily, I haven't had any scale rot at all. That's pretty much from keeping them in too damp of conditions, or I've actually seen people burn the bellies of the snakes, like on a heater or something like that. And here in Colorado, it's so dry, I never really have to worry about scale rot at all. Don't have a question, just wanted to say hi, hello. What's my favorite morph? That would be bamboo. How much substrate do I go through? Depends on how often I clean the tubs. It seems like pretty much once a month I go through all the tubs, and it looks like I actually have a super chat for 99 cents, which is pretty cool. It's funny, I can see the 99 cents on top, but I couldn't see the super chat, which is kind of interesting. Normally they're supposed to stay pinned to the top, but on my Android phone, I'm not sure what happened to it. But I'd say as far as the substrate, I'd say I probably go through 8 or 9 blocks every month, quite a bit of substrate. And it really depends on if I change out the substrate in Lucy. Lucy takes one whole block by herself, and then Sunny takes almost a full block for my 2 reticulated pythons. Why didn't I breed the African soft furs that I bought? I saw that question go really fast, and it's kind of funny. I actually bought the African soft furs, and I had them for, I think I had them for 8 months or 9 months, and it's funny, I bought one male and a bunch of females, and they all got old and never bred and never had babies. I think it was a problem with the male. The male must have been sterile or something like that. It was kind of interesting. The nightlight that I use for my snake. So actually I do use a nightlight in my snake room, and essentially what it is I have one of those 6-foot tall, it's like a floor lamp with an LED bulb screwed into it, and then for the nightlight I just put a towel over the top of the floor lamp, and it makes it really easy in the morning. I just come in and take the towel off of the floor lamp. What YouTube channels do I watch? That is a good question. I kind of jump around a lot. I'd say I'm actually subscribed to probably over 600 channels, and I go through all the different channels. That's where I get a lot of my ideas too, and it's kind of interesting. I pretty much watch Brian Barczyk and Nerd and Predator Ball Python, Clint's Reptiles, a bunch of the big reptile guys. It's kind of interesting. Emily over at Snake Discovery, she's crushing it over there. Kind of jealous about that channel. I look at her subscribers and her growth, and I'm like, I need to focus on my own thing. She's doing so great. It's pretty awesome. So, do I have any lizards? No. Well, actually, I have a couple crested geckos. I don't know if you could count those as lizards. Kind of a different type of reptile. And I've only had them just for maybe a couple months. It's pretty awesome. Bought a male and a female, hoping to get some eggs. That'll be pretty awesome. have I ever gotten a surprise gene from breeding? That's a good question. I actually have a dinker that I'm kind of working with. It's kind of interesting because there's a lot of genes in my snakes that I think are kind of rolling around. I see a lot of stuff that, I think it's something, but I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is. And I never really want to, see a new gene that's a little bit different. I've seen a little bit of calico popping out that's a little bit different, or some granite, but I never like to see something and then label it for sure if I don't actually buy it as that gene right from the top. What is the best ball python morph I've ever produced? I would say that's a good question. The one I liked the best, I think, was my calico pastel bamboo, and I was actually going to hang on to it, and then some guy offered me, I think it was over $1,000 or something like that for it. At the time, I really needed the money, and I had it at the show, and I didn't really want to sell it, and I decided to sell it. I should have hung on to it, but it was probably one of the best snakes that I've ever produced. It was pretty amazing. Let's see, what else? Do I like the gargoyle breed? Not quite familiar with that one. All right, so I'm going to read another question off of this list. I have a kind of a list of questions. The Alien 6900 says, is there reptiles anonymous for the addicted? And I would say no, there isn't, but I think it's a pretty good addiction to have. It's kind of, let me tell you, it can be extremely addictive, and if you spin it right, you can actually make some money, and the hobby pays for itself, which isn't a bad thing. I'm getting they're going pretty fast now. I'm just getting a retic. Wait a minute. They're going pretty fast. All right, I want to actually read another question here from the list because I can't quite keep up with those. All right, Wide Awakeism says, does maternal incubation also require that the female be off food for 2 extra months, or will they eat during the incubation period? And that's kind of interesting because I've actually seen where a lot of my females will actually you take the eggs away and they still think they're on the eggs, and they'll coil up around it, and they won't eat for a really long time. So I'd imagine if you actually had eggs under your females with the maternal incubation, that they would actually actually go off of food for a really long time. And really what you want to do is you want to take the eggs away from them, and then you want to kind of trick them into thinking that they're not on the eggs anymore to get them back on food as quick as possible. How are the cows? That's pretty good. Yeah, actually I do have a baby cow. It's growing really good. The problem is I had my bulls together, and the bulls were fighting pretty bad. When the cow that had the baby went into heat, and the bulls kind of hurt each other. One bull is just kind of like hobbling around a little bit, so I actually had to separate him from the other cows, which is, I always hate seeing my cows get hurt, but those big cows, those bulls are like 2,000 pounds a piece. It's pretty amazing. What kind of cows are they? They are Black Angus. And the reason I got into Black Angus is because everybody, it's a really high demand cow. If I ever wanted to sell a cow, or if I wanted to sell them all, a lot of people would just come in and buy them up. And the funny thing is everybody always wants to eat my cows. I'm like, no, these are pets. The funny thing is if I actually sell a cow, I'm always like, all right, I'm selling it, but just don't tell me what you're doing with it. What kind of enclosure should you get for a ball python? That is kind of interesting. I'd say the main type of enclosure for ball pythons, a lot of people do glass enclosures, and they have hides in the glass enclosure. I don't really think that's the best way to go, but it's probably the most common and maybe the cheapest way to go. But I would actually prefer to get some kind of a rack system. You can actually buy an ARS 7010 rack for like $100 a level. That's probably the best way to go. How large would you like your breeding operation to get? That's a good question. That is something I've been thinking about quite a bit. It's do I really want to keep expanding it, or do I want to kind of keep it small and go more on the YouTube side, or do both and kind of grow them? I'm thinking maybe if I did grow the snake side of it and grow it in my collection really big, I'd probably need some help and hire some help to actually maintain a lot of the collection. I'm pretty much maxed out as far as everything I can do between the YouTube and the collection. I'm pretty much at the maximum size that I can handle for my schedule. How's the weather? The weather is cold. It's actually 23 degrees and pretty much a permafrost up here in the mountains of Colorado. I'm up here about 9,000 feet. It's once the snow hits in the fall, we pretty much have snow up until spring, and then we have a really short summer that where it melts, and almost as soon as it melts, it starts snowing again. I'd say our summers are only about 2.5 months old. Are you able to milk the cows? That is a good question. I actually had a milk cow at one point. I never did milk her. I used to run a bunch of calves on her, and actually she passed away from milk fever, which is the first time I actually ever heard of it. That was pretty sad. Do I have any crocodiles? That's funny you asked that, because crocodiles, I've always kind of been a little afraid of crocodiles and never thought you could actually tame one. And then I've seen quite a few people actually tame them down, which is pretty amazing. Have I ever considered getting arboreal snakes? That is a good question too. Probably won't get into arboreal snakes. Let's see what else we have here. It's going pretty fast. Yes, am I cold in the car? No, I'm not cold. I actually have the car running. It's a really quiet car. This is a Porsche I'm actually sitting in. It's really super quiet. It's an old Porsche. It's 2004. It's getting pretty old, but it's in really good shape. What is my dream morph or combo? That's a good question. I would say probably what I would really like to get into is some of the sunset stuff. That's one of the things I'm kind of waiting for it to come down to actually get into it. Let's see. What would you pair a female piebald with? That is a good question. If I had a female piebald, I actually do have one female pied. The best thing to pair with the pied is another pied, because then you have a whole clutch of pieds. Or what you can do is, if you're kind of looking for something new, you can get something het pied with a bunch of new genes or a whole bunch of other genes in the mix, and then breed it so you can get some visuals with extra genes in the mix. And then if you have another, sometimes you can get into the projects cheaper, because if you have a whole bunch of genes het pied and then you produce a visual male pied with a bunch of genes in there, then you can kind of unload and just keep the male with the multiple genes, breed it back to the female. Let's see. Actually, the funny thing is, I actually watched, I don't know if you've ever seen a live stream from PewDiePie. It's pretty amazing. The comments go so fast, you can't, it's just like a blur. It doesn't even look like comments. It's pretty amazing. Would you sell any triple hits? Maybe if I run into some financial difficulties at some point. I don't really foresee actually selling one of those. I might actually sell the male at some point. Not sure exactly how much. What is the most expensive breed? That is a very good question. Probably the most expensive one that I've produced at the time was my scaleless head lemon blasts. When I actually hatched those out, they were worth $6,000 a piece. Pretty amazing. And then, of course, they dropped really fast because it was a scaleless head project. And do I like the monsoon? Yes, that is an awesome project. It's probably up there with the sunset. I wouldn't mind getting into the monsoon and the sunset. Of course, you need a lot of money to actually invest in those projects. Let's see. All right, so I want to actually read one more question from my list over here. From John Moore. Hey Chris, have you ever had a ball python go from eating rats back to eating mice? And that is a good question. As a matter of fact, what I would actually do is I would probably go, it's kind of interesting, because you pretty much always start hatchlings on live mice, and then you kind of graduate up to rats. And a lot of times, sometimes you have to actually go backwards until they get over that hump. And it's funny, you definitely don't want to keep them on mice for very long, because they can get stuck on mice. Do I ever plan to come to the Phoenix area? Probably not in the near future. I'd like to get around some more, but I don't know. At this point, I'm really kind of juggling everything, and it's hard to keep up with all the animals. Are you going to stick with Morph Market? Probably, yes. I was thinking about doing reptile shows, but the problem is it's kind of I don't know, it's a lot of work actually going to the reptile show. It's easier to sell on Morph Market. Let's see. Whoa, I got a lot of questions going fast. And the funny thing is, I think it's because it's on my phone and I can only see 3 questions at a time and they're scrolling. I think if it was on my laptop, it'd be a little bit easier. Snake trichomonas, not familiar with that. Pastel and cinnamon make a gargoyle. Interesting. How expensive are black python? Not sure. Let's see. Do you promote your videos on other social media? I saw that just before it went. It's interesting you actually say that, because there is another social media site that I'm really active on. I used to be really active on it. I pretty much ignore it anymore. And that is LinkedIn. Believe it or not, over on LinkedIn, I have almost 15,000 connections on LinkedIn, and I was working really hard to build the connections, didn't really know why, and then every now and then I'd throw in a link to one of my videos and kind of drive traffic from LinkedIn over to my videos, which is kind of interesting. Do you sell any rats? I only sell my rats to a local pet store. I don't really sell to the public, just because I don't have time for a lot of people coming. A lot of people wanted to come up and buy, some rats, 2 or 3 at a time. And if I had a pet store or something like that, or a retail store, I might do it, but just kind of running out of my basement the way I'm doing, not right now. Hey man, what's up? You think super females are the way to start? And you mean with supers? The interesting thing about supers is it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you kind of get everything all the same. So if you have super pastel and you breed it, everything has pastel. If someone's coming up to your table and they're like, I've had some people come up and they're like, whatever I buy, I do not want pinstripe in anything. If you actually had, I know is it like a super pastel and someone didn't want pastel, then they're kind of stuck with it. Although it's a powerful breeder, I'm not sure I would really work too much. I'd actually rather do allelic combos instead of supers personally. How many rats do I keep? I don't really keep any. Well, it's funny. I think you said, how many rats do I keep as a pet? I don't really keep. Hey, thanks for the super chat. So it's funny, because my pet rats are not really pet rats that you actually take out and play and hold and kind of play around with. My pet rats are just kind of rats that really that I don't feed off, I guess. I just keep them as kind of separate. I kind of treat them as the rest of them, but I don't really, have them as pets. Kind of interesting. Would I ever get into boas? That is a good question. I've actually really considered getting into boas, but the problem is right now is I just don't have enough room to expand. The funny thing is I want to do a lot of holdbacks from this year for ball pythons, and I don't really have enough room for the holdbacks from last year, and that is the problem. And the weird thing is because you're trying to grow everything up and trying to expand the collection, but not to a point. It's always a juggle between the new snakes and the old snakes, and what should I keep? And you kind of get attached to some snakes, and then some they're useful and they make money, but you really don't want to get rid of. It's kind of funny how it's kind of the juggle of what should I keep, what should I sell, and you're always kind of juggling them around. Looks like we're up to 23 minutes 42 seconds on this live stream. And the funny thing is I know one of these lights are going to go out because they're on batteries. I'm sitting here in my car doing a live stream in the parking lot of King Supers. So we'll see how long these lights last for. I actually have one spare light, so if one goes out I can swap it out, and we'll keep going until both my lights are out, and then I'm sitting here in the dark, and then we'll have to end the live stream. So I saw a question, how old is Bobby? He is 7 years old. He's a pretty big boy. It's funny. He's doing really good. Go herping, Brat. What do I think of go herping? It's I hate to criticize other YouTubers. I mean, it's hard enough to get in front of the camera. The funny thing is about YouTube is, I used to do this on a lot of social media, on a lot of the reptile forums. You say something, and you think, all right, this is, you're always looking for a topic, and the funny thing is you're like, all right, I could do a little clickbait of a video, maybe put a negative spin on it, get some views, but then you put it out there, and then it's out there forever, and then sometimes you get millions of views, and then you're kind of stuck with something like that, and you don't realize it until you get down the road, and then you start thinking, man, maybe I shouldn't be saying stuff like that. So it's being a YouTuber is a little tough because you're always being criticized for everything you say. How many females do you think you need to breed to make the same money, to make some money? That is a good question. I think it depends on the value of the females. So for example, if you had like 20 normal females and a bamboo and started cranking out bamboos, versus if you had one sunset male and a female, you could probably do just as good with the sunset than you could with 20 normals, breeding some genes into that. So it really depends on the quality, I would say. What are your tips to get a snake to eat? That is a good question. I'd say just keep feeding every single week, and I would say if they don't eat for maybe 2 months or 3 months, I'd start trying different things. Maybe, if you keep feeding rat week after week after week and if they just don't eat, what I would actually do is I would go back to mice, or maybe do a small live rat, maybe do an African soft fur, and then just try one, and if they eat it, then go right back to rats. Sometimes you can feed them like a mouse, and if they eat the mouse, then follow up right with the rat in the same day, which works a lot of times. Where can you purchase snakes from me? You can actually purchase them on Morph Market. I have, I think pretty much underneath all my videos now, there's a link to Morph Market. You can actually go there, and I think I sold maybe 12 or 13 snakes out there now, so I think I have maybe about 25 snakes left that I'm still have for sale over there. I have a male 550 grams first season. What are the odds that he will breed? I would say good odds. I actually started at 400 grams with my scaleless head ball python, which is kind of cool. He actually gave me a whole bunch of scaleless head stuff the very first year, and it's funny putting this little tiny 400 gram snake on top of some of my big females. And the funny thing is, I don't think you actually bred at first, but if you keep pairing them up month after month, and then as soon as you separate them, feed them really well so they can get the extra weight, and by the end of the season he was over 500 grams, and then all those females actually bred, which is pretty cool. Let's see, what's a good weight for female and male to breed them? I would say good weight for females, I would say 1,500 grams, but really you don't want to breed them too fast, because if you breed them too fast, what happens is a lot of times they'll go off of food. So a lot of times with a lot of my snakes, I kind of learned this the hard way. After 2 years, they're right on the cusp, 1,400, 1,500 grams. Then you pair them up, and then if they go on a fast, not only are you kind of losing time, a lot of times the first year they won't breed, which is interesting. And then the males, you probably want to breed the males about 500 grams minimum, most people say. How old do hognose snakes have to be to breed? That's a good question. I'm not real familiar with hognose. Do I do any collaboration videos with other breeders? I've done a few with, well, not really collaboration, I guess. I've kind of done some with Predator ball python. I was like, in my early days, I was like, hey, go over and check out this guy's channel. And then it was kind of funny because I think he kind of did the same. And it's kind of interesting. Even now, some of those old videos, you still drive traffic over to his channel. So it's kind of interesting with collaboration, how sometimes you can drive traffic back and forth between channels. Even on a long-term basis, you get some of those videos out there and they just keep driving the traffic. Could my normal retic be a mainland? More than likely, if you bought a normal retic, it is probably a mainland. Mainlands get really big. Am I safe with the new YouTube rules? And what kind you smoke? Only smoke the good stuff, but I don't smoke any marijuana here. Everyone thinks, yeah, and in Colorado is actually the first state to legalize marijuana. But the funny thing is it's actually illegal on the federal level, and I probably wouldn't smoke it anyways, even if they legalized it on the federal level. What can I breed a pastel special het pied to? That is a good question. If it's het pied, I'd probably try to work something else het pied or a visual pied into it to get some of that back out, so you can actually get some visual pieds. Do you still breed ASF? No, I gave up on African soft furs. My last African soft furs were kind of a bust because the male, I think, was sterile or something, and it just didn't breed. And then I actually bred them the first time before that. I had a colony before them, and I actually got out of them because they were so slow in breeding for some reason. It seemed like it took months and months to actually get babies, where mice and rats, it was like every few weeks I was getting babies. It was almost like the African soft furs were pets instead of feeders. It was pretty amazing. Am I planning on start breeding hognose? Well, that's kind of interesting you actually asked that, because here in Colorado I've seen some rules on some of the other YouTube videos and some of the websites that actually limit the number of hognose snakes that you can have here in Colorado because they're native to Colorado. I think you can only have like 7 or something hognoses, which is kind of interesting. So probably won't be breeding hognoses here in Colorado. What should I pair with my pastel jungle woma? That's a good question. What I would actually pair with that is another jungle woma and shoot for the super jungle woma, which is called the Ridgeback. Looks kind of like a spider morph. You have a snake you want to give me? Actually, yeah, that's interesting. I might take a snake if you actually offered it to me, if it was a female. Are you still breeding Pac-Man frogs? It's actually, I have a tragic story with my Pac-Man frogs. And pretty much all my frogs, and my red-eyed green tree frog. We actually had some ants out on the deck, and we were spraying ant killer on the deck. We had the kitchen window open, and the wind shifted, brought some of that ant killer into the house, killed every single frog in the whole house except one, and that was my really big green Pac-Man that was up in my room. So pretty much wiped out all the frogs that we have, unfortunately. What's my biggest tip for first-time breeder? Have patience. It takes a lot of patience, and I would say, well, it depends. I would say go slow, but if you have an investor who's willing to invest and take some time, yeah, you can actually do it that way. But normally you start slow and kind of ease into it and have a lot of patience. It takes quite a few years to build up a collection and the equipment. Do I think the ball python market is still growing strong? I think it's stronger than ever. As a matter of fact, I think it's stronger now than it ever has been. So if you kind of look back at the beginning of the ball python craze, where people were making crazy money, it actually took quite a bit of money to actually get into the game. And now it's like we can get into the game at at $50 all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars. So whatever you have in your pocket or your bank account, you can actually get into ball pythons. So I think it's especially with new morphs coming out all the time. How often do I spray my balls and retics? Really depends on the weather, I guess. I probably, here in Colorado, it dries out quite a bit. Since I added my humidifier, not quite as often. I probably do it every 3 to 4 days, pretty much go in and wet them down. And then I do a quick spot clean too. Hello from Mexico. Hets are supposed to be invisible, but yes, they can be expressed sometimes, which is kind of interesting. I've actually seen het pieds. You can see het pied markers sometimes on normals. Sometimes you can see one copy of a het ghost. It's a little bit brighter. I have a het ghost lesser. It seems a lot brighter than others. Kind of interesting how sometimes the hets can actually kind of bleed through a little bit. Do I plan on having more live streams? That's a very good question. I actually can't do a live stream from my house because my upload speed is only 2 megabits per second. So it's pretty much impossible. I don't think I could do it there. I actually had to drive down here about a half hour from my house to actually get the connection down here by King Supers. Let's see what other questions we had. Are the retics gonna have the same setup as the ball pythons? That is a very good question. I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do with my retics, because I know the retic hatchlings are gonna be a lot bigger than the ball pythons. But the problem is I think they're gonna grow really fast. They're probably gonna outgrow the hatchling racks. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to buy another hatchling rack for those retics once I hatch them out, which would be kind of interesting. Hopefully I can sell them really quick. If I'm selling them on the internet, maybe selling some at wholesale, I could probably unload them pretty quick. Pied retic or cow? Definitely cow. If I got a retic, as a matter of fact, if they came out with a super dwarf or a dwarf cow retic, I would probably get one. Are you married? Yes, I am married, believe it or not. Been married for over 20 years now, yes. No kids. Am I breeding any corn snakes? No, I do have the one corn snake, but I'm not breeding the corn snake. It's kind of interesting to get a corn snake because I've never had one before. All right, so I'm going to read one more off of this because those comments are going pretty quick. I'm going to take my eyes off the screen for a second. So this is from Terry A. I noticed that my breeding females are laying on their sides. When does this occur in the breeding process? And that's kind of interesting because sometimes I've actually seen my males laying on the side. I thought it was only females at first, but I see both males and females kind of curling up on their sides on the on season and in the off season. So sometimes you can actually, I thought it was an indicator of something. Maybe they were kind of repositioning the eggs inside the females during the breeding season, but it almost seems like the males and the females both do it on and off the season. It's kind of interesting. All right, so I'm actually surprised my lights are still on 37 minutes. Pretty amazing, especially since I, the funny thing is some of these batteries are like half dead from my last videos, so it's pretty amazing that they're still going. I'm not sure exactly what the charge on my phone is either. Nix for lice. That is interesting. I really don't like to use any kind of anything for mites as a preventative unless I actually have mites. I'm kind of scared of everything. I've actually heard some of that mite killer can actually kill your snakes. What project am I most excited for this season? Why in the car? Because I don't have fast enough internet at my house. It's like 2 megabits per second at my house, and this is kind of a test for my very first live stream. I wish I could actually do it down in my snake room and I could kind of bring the phone around and kind of show you some stuff. Would be pretty cool, but until I actually get a facility down here, if I actually get to that point and get out of the house, I could actually get a faster internet. I don't even think they offer a faster internet. I'm so far out in the mountains. And I've actually tried like a satellite internet before. The problem is every time it snows, then I pretty much don't have any connection at all, which is a bummer. So my most anticipated clutch of the year, I'm actually breeding my lesser clown to my banana Enchi clown, which looks like she's actually going to lay some eggs. She's really big and beefy. As a matter of fact, I just filmed her tonight for tomorrow's video, so you actually see her. And if I actually get some of those, I'll probably hold most of those females back and really boost my clowns. Yeah, I can't read them all. They're going too fast. They're going really fast. The problem with my phone is I can only see 3 comments at a time, and I'm like on a laptop you can see like the whole list of comments, so I'm kind of limited as far as what I can do. What would I pair with a vanilla? I would pair a fire and do the vanilla cream. Those are pretty awesome. I think it's a lilac too, which is pretty cool. Pest strips for snake mite prevention. Actually, I would actually not recommend doing anything for a snake mite prevention. I would only treat for mites when you actually have mites. I just saw a question really quick on my bypass. How do you entice a male to breed that's not breeding in his first season, which is kind of interesting. Essentially what I do is, it's kind of funny because a lot of people will pair their snakes together. They'll put the male and the female and they'll keep peeking in the tubs, and then they'll say, you know, I haven't seen any copulation at all. And the thing is, sometimes they'll copulate in the middle of the night just for a little bit, and then they'll separate and you'll never really see it. And I've gotten to the point where I don't even look to see if there's a copulation anymore. I just throw the males with the females, you know, put it in for so many days, rotate it through the rack. If they breed, they breed. If they don't, they don't. I find most of my males will breed most of the females if you just throw them in there and let them go. Yeah. What incubator do I use? I use a homemade incubator. My favorite morph, that is a bamboo. Let's see. Yeah, put another male shed in there. I've actually seen people do another male shed. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different tricks, but you know, it's kind of interesting. I kind of just ignore it all and I let the snakes do their own thing. You know, some people try to do different tricks. Some people actually put two males together, kind of let them spar for about 10 minutes and then separate them and then throw them in with the female, thinking that's going to make them breed a little faster, which is kind of interesting. One trick that I do use is when I take my male and I put it with a female, I like to take my little watering can and sprinkle some room temperature water on the snakes, kind of gets them out of the whatever mood they're in and kind of throws them off. For some reason, it seems like it makes them breed a little easier. Does my wife have any favorites? That's a good question. She doesn't really like snakes, I would say, for the most part. I usually have to pay her for her assistance in the snake room, which is kind of interesting. But she does have a favorite snake, and that is Lucy, my big white albino reticulated python. Boise, hello. Do I take Bobby when I'm doing errands? No, I don't take Bobby out. The funny thing is I think I kind of stress Bobby out enough just doing the daily videos. Sometimes he gets a little agitated, I think, especially if I just, you know, trying to do a video and it kind of drags out a little bit. Punk Rocka, hey, what's up? From Fort Collins, cool. What morphs keep their colors into adulthood? The one I like the best is probably the Pastel Desert Ghost, which is probably the most impressive as an adult. The Desert Ghost really makes things pop. How often can I handle my snake? Yes, I would think you can handle it daily. I probably wouldn't go over like 45 minutes to an hour. I know, like, if I'm trying to do a video with Bobby and I start going past, you know, 45 minutes or something, he gets like, he just wants to be put back in his tub, gets a little agitated. Seems like he really enjoys coming out for short bursts, but I would say, you know, not really, you know, for a long burst. If I could have any animal you don't have, what would it be? That is a good question. Maybe elephants. The problem is I don't have the facility for elephants. If they could take an elephant and kind of shrink it down to like a St. Bernard size, I think that would be awesome. Did I ever work with boas? No, never did work with a boa. I've handled a few boas, but I've never actually had a boa, never really, you know, tried to breed them or anything. How many times do I pair? That is a good question. Usually what I do, I would say I usually start mid-October, and then I start pairing until February, March, maybe April. I start seeing ovulations, I think, in maybe March, I think it is. So October, November, December, January, February, March. Maybe 4 to 5 months, I say, that I pair. Did Red get bought? No, I still have Big Red, my corn snake. He's pretty cool. I just checked on him today and gave him a water down his enclosure a little bit. He's going into a really deep shed. The pattern on the ball pythons influenced their sibling patterns. It's patterns? I don't really think so. It's kind of interesting. I think a lot of patterns are kind of random, although I have seen some different lines of like clowns. It kind of seems like all the babies kind of look similar to the parents, although it's really polymorphic from one line of clown to another. Let's see. Why are you in your car? I'm in my car because I can't live stream at home. I came to my car so I could actually get a faster internet connection. New York City, hello. Would I come to a New York show? Maybe, if I wasn't so busy doing videos every day. It's kind of crazy with my schedule. Even though I quit my day job, I still have a pretty crazy schedule. I'm pretty much stuck at home because I have so many animals that I have to take care of, and I'm not at the point where I can actually hire someone yet. So it's kind of in a transition. Have I ever been to the UK? No, I haven't been to the UK. Was I in the 101st? Yes, I was in the 101st Airborne for 4 years as a ground pounder infantryman. My specialty was anti-tank. We actually used tow guns, which is a wire-guided missile. Spent a year over in Korea. It was kind of interesting. May I feed my ball pythons eggs? There's actually an egg-eating snake, but I don't think any other snake besides the egg-eating snake will actually eat an egg. Have you thought about a separate snake shop? I don't think I'm actually going to do a separate shop for snakes. What I'll probably do, I'm kind of up in the air right now, but I'll probably expand my breeding operation into some kind of a warehouse or something like that. Maybe expand it a little bit, but I don't want a really big warehouse from cranking out thousands of ball pythons. I'll probably keep it, smaller, probably what I'll do is I'll transition more into high-end ball pythons and kind of get out of some of the other, some of the lower stuff. Would it creep you out if I named my son Chris Hardwick? That would be cool. That'd be fine. I would be honored. Never heard that before. All right, so I want to actually try to read another question from this list over here. Torian King, how much do you make breeding puppies? Do you make a profit? I actually did breed my puppies. I've bred my dogs twice. It was an amazing experience. And let me tell you, a whole yard full of 8-week-old puppies, there's nothing like it. It is amazing. Let me tell you, it is a lot of work, and I'm not sure if you make a whole lot of money, because once you figure in all the shots from the vets and the time that you spend and everything else. I did it twice, but I probably wouldn't do puppies again. But let me tell you, snakes, you can make more money with snakes, and it's a lot easier with snakes. Can I send you half my subscribers? Doesn't really work like that. If I could send those subscribers over, the subscribers is kind of free boa. I might take a free boa. I might take some free snakes. What should you look for in an online seller? That is a good question. I'd probably look up, some of the people that actually bought from an online seller to see how honest they are, if you had any problems with them. I actually bought some snakes from some online people that if someone asked me about them, I'd say probably don't buy from them. But the problem is, a lot of snakes that you buy, you have pretty much one option in a lot of cases. There's only one place that you can actually get that specific combo. What would you suggest for a rat supplier? I would actually use Rodent Pro. It's pretty much what I use pretty much all the time. So we're at 48 minutes and 48 seconds. Probably what I'll do is I'll talk for another 12 minutes and wrap it up at 1 hour. Lucy is why I bought her a tick. Lucy is awesome. She's really awesome. So the only problem is I went in to pick up Lucy the other day, and she is so heavy. It's funny because I slid the boa tub open, and I was like, all right, I'm going to take Lucy. I want to put her back in her enclosure on the pool table, and I chickened out. It's like, that snake is like 100 pounds now. I think she's even more than that. I think she's building eggs. It's pretty awesome. What's the biggest snake you keep in an AR? A 70-30? I think a 70 30 would probably keep the biggest ball python. I only have a couple that would be kind of cramped in there. You can keep any size ball python in there. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to read one more from my list here. Will you, F equals MA says, will you post more, when will you post more snakes on Morph Market? And that is a good question. I'll probably post more snakes once I start hatching them out here in probably 6 months. I would say it's going to be a while since I actually get eggs, and then it's another 2 months to hatch them out, and then usually it's another 1.5 to 2 months before they have enough to actually get to the point where you can ship them out, because they have to have, you know, some people ship them after 3 meals. I don't think it's enough after 3 meals to actually ship a snake and or even sell a snake locally, unless you really know what you're doing. Do you really save money breeding your own rodents? That is a very good question. I'd say maybe not. The thing I like about breeding my own rodents is I think there's ways you can actually do it. So the problem is breeding your own rodents, it's a lot of time if you take your time into consideration. So for example, if I didn't clean any of the tubs and I hired someone to clean all the rat tubs for minimum wage, I probably wouldn't make any money, because of the labor. But if I did it all myself, you know, you're not paying yourself and you're coming out ahead. And then I'm using really high-end rodent food, and if you switch to like a dog food or something like that, if you can find your bedding for free or really cheap, you know, cheaper than I'm spending, you could probably come out ahead a lot better. And then actually, if you're breeding rodents and you actually sold them as pets, let me tell you, you can make a killing selling. Even if you sell just a few as pets, you can come out way ahead. How old am I? Take a guess. How old do you think I am? I am a lot older than you probably think I am. 27. Woohoo! Thanks, punk rocka. I am actually 53. Can I do a step-by-step video on breeding? I actually have quite a few on breeding. Yeah, hopefully I don't see that 60 for quite a while. That's a big number. I am 53. I'll be 54 in May. Yeah, still just a baby. Yeah, got a late start on breeding ball pythons. Of course, the market's, you know, when I was 20 years old, ball pythons were selling for $5. So, yes, I am a Gemini. Yes. All right, so I'm going to read. Let's see, we got 52. We got another 7 minutes on this live stream. All right. Fishing NYC, Fishing New York City asks, can you do a video where you feed your adult ball pythons? And that is a very good question. A lot of people have asked for feeding videos. And the problem is I actually did a feeding video where it was like almost 45 minutes of straight feeding all my snakes back to back. It took me forever to make that video. I think I put like 8 hours into that video, you know, stitching all the little feeding videos together, putting music in there and everything. And then when I posted it, YouTube actually demonetized it because they didn't think it was appropriate. They stripped of all the ads and everything, which is kind of interesting that, you know, sometimes when I feed, I'll have like really good content, a lot of stuff where I'll explain this and that, and then I'll feed and they don't demonetize that. And this one was just basically feeding from the beginning to the end. They decided they didn't like it, they demonetized it, and then pretty much from that point I decided that I'm not going to do any feeding videos. All right, so yeah, the comments disappeared for just a second. It's kind of weird how the comments are working on my phone. Any changes coming to my channel due to the new terms of service for YouTube? That is a good question. I don't think so. The only one video that I had that was had to change it for COPPA compliance, and that was how to convince your parents to buy you a snake. And I think it was kind of geared towards kids. So I kind of marked it as kids only. So it's kind of interesting. I haven't gone over there since the first of the year. It'll be interesting to actually go over there and see if they kind of stripped everything from that video. And that's the problem now from the first of the year. If you have a video that's, has kids in it or is directed towards kids, essentially what they'll do is they'll strip it from all the they'll delete all the comments. You can't comment, you can't do a thumbs up or thumbs down. They don't even send you notifications on it. It's pretty intense. They pretty much demonetize it basically. If I could have any snake, no matter the price, what would it be? That is a good question. I would probably go after some of the new morphs, like the monsoon or the sunset or something like that. Or, if I could actually find maybe a super dwarf cow retic, I might do something like that. That would be pretty awesome. Do people notice you on the street? That's a good question, actually. It's like, I'm actually not really on the street. I'm like in the parking lot of King Soopers, way over in the corner where nobody else is at, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So, and the highway is kind of right in front of me, but it's way down there. Kind of had to get out of my house to do a live stream. It's kind of just an experimental live stream to see if I could actually do it on my phone. I didn't know even if it was possible or if it would actually last the whole hour, which looks like we only have 4 more minutes left. Do I smoke weed? No, I don't smoke weed. I don't drink alcohol either. How and when to switch from mice to rats? I would actually switch as soon as you can, as soon as your snake will actually take the rats, because you really want to get them off of mice as soon as possible. The worst thing you can do is have a really old snake stuck on mice, because you just can't get the weight on them. I actually have one big spider. It's a jungle woman spider female, and I just can't get the weight to get her to breed again. I actually bred her once, but I think that was kind of lucky. That was the first time I actually bred her. Axanthic Joliffe line. What are your thoughts on the line? I'm not really familiar about the different lines of Axanthic. It's kind of interesting because I've seen a lot of different Axanthic lines. Some are actually, at first I thought, like the TSK line was a lot better than everything else. And then I realized there's lines within the lines. I've actually seen some VPI lines that are really impressive over in the UK. So I don't really think it depends on the line. I think there's a lot of variability within the different lines of Axanthic. How do you maintain humidity in your snake tubs? That's a good question. Essentially what I use is I use the coconut husk substrate, and I use a little watering can, and I water down the substrate. I also put a humidifier in the room, go through about 1 gallon a day, but I don't really think that makes a dent. I used to have a really big humidifier, and I was going through almost 5 gallons a day to try to maintain the room at about 60% humidity. I got tired of carrying water to the humidifier. You almost need, if you really did a humidifier the right way, I think what you do is you'd hook it up to an RO system, plumb it directly into the humidifier, and do it that way. Let's see. Accidentally overfed my ball python twice. He regurgitated. How long before I should feed him again? That's a good question. As a matter of fact, I've had some problems with my female albino actually regurgitating several times this year. And it's always a question, how long do you wait? Do you feed them something smaller? And I would probably wait at least 2 weeks before you try to feed again after a regurgitation. Do you plan a project with toffee candy? No, probably won't go down that road, although it's pretty interesting. I would do toffee candy if I expanded into a bigger building where I had a lot of different, lot more room for a lot of different projects. But I don't really want to, with the small space that I have just in my basement, probably won't try to squeeze it in. What do I think of Orange Dream pies? They're pretty awesome. I think Justin Kobelka has made some pretty awesome stuff with that. All right, this is the last minute. 1 more minute. I'm surprised my lights are still going. how's your electric bill with those big racks? You know, the funny thing is that in my snake room, I think the rats put out most of the heat. It's really well insulated. I have good insulation on the walls and the floors and the ceiling, and the rats put out so much heat. It's pretty amazing because we can actually have a power outage for a really long time, and I go down in the snake room and it's still in the 70s in the middle of winter, which is pretty awesome. Great lights. Yeah, I actually have my studio lights are actually working pretty good. So yeah, so I'm trying to I was looking at my screen trying to figure out how to end the live screen. I guess there's a little X up in the top. Do I plan on getting a bigger breeding facility? Yes, at some point. I'm not exactly sure when. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel right now, so I get a lot of money from my YouTube. I can actually take my YouTube money and reinvest it into my reptile business, probably at some kind of another location closer to town where I could actually do some real streams other than just doing a live stream here in my car, which would be pretty cool. Probably hire a small crew to handle most of the reptiles and the rodents and stuff like that. Maybe travel a little bit more, do some shows, and maybe travel around the world and kind of chase the snakes around the world, which would be pretty cool. Where do I live? I live in Colorado, here up in the mountains, up in Bailey, Colorado. It's about an hour west of Denver. So that is pretty much it. It looks like I actually got some super chats. Looks like $8.90. It's pretty awesome. I know you can actually donate here. This is the first time I've ever done it. And appreciate the live chats. Appreciate everything on the live stream and all the questions. So I will see you. I'm not sure if I'm going to do another live stream, but have a good night. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And I'll see you in the next video.